Welcome to the Legends of Ram Setu. I am your host, Arup K. Chatterjee. In the previous episode, I spoke about why I wrote two books on Ram Setu, first published in 2024 in Britain, and then another one for Indian audiences titled Ram Setu, The Memoirs of an Enchanted Bridge, published by Rupa in 2025. I did so to challenge the shrill and polarized public discourse around the eponymous sacred geography, and to insist on a calm, evidence-based discussion. Today, we will continue with that approach, and we'll take a historical journey to see how an early European visitor saw the bridge and why that chapter in the life of Ram Setu truly matters to us even today. But before that, a quick reminder of what Ram Setu is. Ram Setu, or Adam's Bridge as it came to be called in British sources, is a 30-mile long chain of sandbanks between Pamban Island of Rameswaram and Mannar Island in Sri Lanka. It is called Ram Setu, literally Lord Ram's Bridge, referring to Valmiki Ramayan's epic tale of Lord Ram building a causeway to Sri Lanka with the help of Nala, Hanuman and other hominids. Today, scientists note that many of these shoals are less than a meter deep and seriously hinder navigation. Since the 19th century, engineers have eyed the bridge mainly as a shipping obstacle, not a holy site. Geologists have even found evidence that it was once a continuous land connection between India and Sri Lanka. Ram Setu is as interesting for its geology and geography as it is for its legends. It is a natural formation and possibly even of human construction, and it happens to connect multiple cultures in a space where science, history, religion, and politics intersect. Today, many Indians care about Ram Setu not out of blind faith, but because it's part of our heritage and a puzzle for researchers. I've often said that this is not about superstition versus science. It's about an island-rich history and heritage. Geologists study how these shoals were formed. Historians and cultural scholars study how the bridge has figured in local lore and colonial reports. And Indian citizens care because Ram Setu continues to be a symbol that connects their nation with a civilization. Indeed, the subject deserves a calm, informed discussion. So, let's turn back the clock to the 17th century, to one of the first Western observers of this region, a Dutch Calvinist minister named Philippus Baldaeus. Baldaeus was a Dutch Reformed Church minister sent to Ceylon, modern-day Sri Lanka, during the Dutch colonial period. In 1658, the Dutch East India Company seized Jaffna, northern Ceylon, from the Portuguese, and Baldaeus accompanied the military expedition. He stayed on in Jaffna and the Coromandel coast, preaching and studying the local peoples. As one map caption of Ceylon notes, he was the second European after Abraham Rogeres to visit Ceylon, and he documented the life, language and culture of the Tamil people living in the north of the island. Baldaeus wrote a detailed book, a true and exact description of the East India coasts of Malabar and Coromandel. Originally published in Dutch, it was translated into English by the late 17th century, including new maps and observations by Baldaeus. After several years in Asia, Baldaeus returned to Holland and died still very young, but his work lived on. His map of Ceylon and Malabar were so influential that a 1718 atlas explicitly credits Philippi Baldaeus as a source. In other words, European mapmakers were still using Baldaeus' surveys decades later. His travelogue and maps helped shape how Europe saw southern India and Sri Lanka. Baldaeus was unusual for his time. He not only reported on geography but learned local languages. He even translated the Lord's Prayer into Tamil, though imperfectly. It was the first printed Tamil text in Europe. The map descriptions remind us that he documented local customs respectfully. He did not dismiss Hindu beliefs. He simply recorded what he saw. But what did Baldaeus say about Ram Setu or Adam's Bridge? Well, Baldaeus did not record any spiritual significance of the bridge. He didn't write about gods or miracles there. Instead, like most European observers of his day, he treated it as a geographical feature, a chain of shoals in the sea. In his Dutch text, he described the coasts, ports, and obstacles of navigation, and the bridge would have been one such obstacle for him. However, Baldaeus passed on a most interesting folk tale about the bridge being impassable. An 1834 report notes that Dutch records via Baldaeus contained an anecdote of warships using the bridge. By the 1870s, historian Peter Suckling reported this legend: a number of Portuguese frigates escaping from the Dutch by sailing through a passage of the shoals. The story was that small Portuguese ships once slipped through the narrow channels of Adam's Bridge or Ram Setu to evade the Dutch. Baldaeus relayed it as an interesting footnote, not as a proof of anything magical. The very phrasing, escaping by sailing through the passage, shows the bridge was thought of as a tricky sea route, not a temple or a holy bridge. Baldaeus himself merely recorded that the northern end of Ceylon, or Jaffna, lies just across these shallows. On his map, one could see the line of tiny islands and sandbars labeled in Dutch as part of the coastline. He didn't refer to the Ramayan's tradition, nor was he hostile to it. He was a careful chronicler. So when we imagine Baldaeus at Ram Setu, we should picture a curious scholar noting, "Shallow reefs here, dangerous for ships," not a scoffing skeptic or a zealot. It's important to emphasize that in Baldaeus' time, Ram Setu had no official religious importance to Europeans. Therefore, they used the biblical name Adam's Bridge, deriving from older Arabic lore and Adam's legendary footsteps, or simply described it as reefs. Only later did the legend of Lord Ram become central in Indian nationalist discourse. For Baldaeus, the bridge was just another navigational fact. So he decided to leave the world with the anecdote of the Portuguese frigates as a practical maritime legend. It didn't mock Hindu belief, rather it spoke to Dutch and Portuguese naval histories. Baldaeus was carrying a Dutch administrative brief, so we can credit him with curiosity, not bias. In fact, accounts of Ceylon by his friend Adrian Rayland, the scholar cartographer who later used Baldaeus' work, also treat the bridge as a curiosity and a chart feature, not as a holy site. Baldaeus' maps and travelogues went on to shape European understanding of the region. His surveys of Ceylon were incorporated into later atlases. Even 2 generations after his voyage, Western mapmakers were still relying on Baldaeus' observations. His description of Rameswaram, Jaffna, and the Gulf of Mannar would have informed everyone from colonial administrators to missionaries. In these early maps, the bridge is drawn as a broken line of reefs, an obstacle marked on the chart. Now, where does the story of Baldaeus leave us today? Ram Setu remains relevant not because of superstition, but precisely in spite of superstitions. Geologists still examine its structure as part of plate movements. Historians still study the colonial era proposals to dredge Ram Setu, which shows its continuing geostrategic importance. Cultural scholars look at it as an icon in the Ramayan and how that story has been interpreted over time. And of course, to millions of Indians, it's a heritage symbol worth preserving. But Baldaeus didn't need to choose sides between God and geology. He simply recorded what he saw. We can do the same today by looking at reliable sources, old travel accounts, official reports, geological studies, and get a fuller picture. What I hope you take from this episode is to see how an early European visitor was fascinated by local Indian cultures, so much so that he even created a modern-day military legend that would go on to compete against and perhaps even complete the Legends of Ram Setu. Thank you for listening. In the next episode, I hope to take you into a deeper dive into the 17th century history of Ram Setu, perhaps with the help of a series of European maps and the history of the Setupatis, who were the designated protectors of the Setu. Until then, keep questioning and learning about these layers of history beneath the waves. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, and share the episode with someone who cares about coastlines and stories. I'm Arut K. Chatterjee, and until next time, may the splashing waters keep reminding you of this series.